Have you ever wondered how some games with millions of dollars in budget get outnumbered and outsold by some indie games with few developers and almost no budget? Well, it's because big studios overlook the aspect of community. No, not the sitcom. What exactly makes community such a vital point in players playing a game? How do these games even build a sense of community? And why do players value it so much, even if you think you don't? Come with me to see how a game was built from scratch thanks to their understanding of community, and how one game didn't care, killing them even before being released. Let's talk about community, more specifically about communities in gaming. First, let's describe what's a community. Formally, a community can be described as a fellowship formed with others where they share common interests, goals, or attitudes. Communities can be built anywhere, and gaming isn't an exception to this. We can see communities anywhere in gaming, ranging from the big multiplayer hubs up to the most niche single-player game you can imagine. The fact is that even if as gamers we consider ourselves introverts or antisocials, we all want to feel like we belong to a community or a group, and we all want to share our common interests with people, either that's in person or online. These are the basics of community or community building, and in gaming, this plays a much bigger role than you think so. Correctly implementing a space for a community to be created, or developers pushing community first in their games, can make or break a video game.
Oh, but it's so simple. The devs just need to add multiplayer to a game.
No, it's not that simple as you think, because it also varies on other factors. For example, you can have a boring game, slap multiplayer in it, and expect for a community to be formed. For a community to work, the game needs to appeal to their audience. You need to spark this light in a person that generates the feeling of, I want to tell everyone about this game, or I want to tell everyone about what I just did in this game. So it's not only about sparking this feeling of people recommending a game, but a feeling of wanting to talk about it even when you're outside of the game. This is obviously easier said than done. There's a reason why not every indie dev out there is a multimillionaire. The fact is that you need a very well-crafted recipe to create this and achieve this in a sense. It's not impossible, but it's very hard. As mentioned, creating a good game isn't the whole recipe for good community building. It definitely helps, but there's way more that needs to be done. In reality, community building can start as early as the planning phase and even keep going after the game is released, and it is often found in good marketing strategies. So let's explore together two specific cases. One game that started with no community and had to build it up from zero with care and love for the game, resulting in a success, and the other one that had everything to succeed but killed their community even before being launched. Before we begin talking about these games, I want to mention some disclaimers. It might seem that this comparison is unfair since I chose two very opposite games, but that is exactly why I chose them. Opposite budgets, opposite team sizes, and even opposite genres. What I want to point that even if two games are polar opposites, the fact that community building is what killed or made these games. I also want to talk about the second disclaimer. The terms failure and success are all depending on the context and the scope of the games. For example, for an solo indie dev, 20k copies sold of a game is a massive success, while for a big studio with $300 million in budget, 20k copies sold is file for bankruptcy levels of failure. So please remember that when we're talking about failures and successes in the gaming industry, we all have to look at the context behind the games and the scope of the projects to begin with. So without further hesitation, let's talk about our success case study in the games, Project Zomboid. The not so flashy 2D isometric survival RPG game is the definition of a passion project. Released in mid-2011s, Indie Stone was composed of 4 main developers, and inspired in zombie movies and The Sims, a weird mix I know, they released one of the most innovative and original zombie games out there to the date. Project Zomboid is the perfect definition of how an indie game should work. Small teams, a lot of development cycles, and all the money generated goes back into the game, dropping update after update, improving the game, and always having the player in mind first. Just so you understand, 42 massive updates have been released to Project Zomboid since they released, always adding new content and every time becoming more and more ambitious. The game wasn't always considered a success though. When it was released on Steam in 2013, the game always struggled to break even 3,000 players, but everything changed in 2022 when they released their multiplayer update. This helped the game become viral and the game skyrocketed in numbers, as well as in sales. The revenues generated by Project Zomboid are estimated to be in the $80 million range, which again, for such a small indie studio, is a massive success. Now, I know that I mentioned that adding multiplayer isn't the key to community building. It's not as simple as boom, here's multiplayer and then you have your community. Multiplayer did help in the virality of Project Zomboid and also helped growing the Project Zomboid's community. I'm not gonna deny that. But the real reason of why this wave was even created in the first place, or why Project Zomboid could maintain the way of success even after the multiplayer update, is that Project Zomboid was laying the foundations way before the multiplayer update. Aside from Project Zomboid being a very original game, having magnificent game design, and in reality simply being a very good game, one of the reasons why Project Zomboid was able to cultivate this community was because of how challenging the game is. Let me explain. The main game loop of Project Zomboid is for the player not to survive. They want you to die time after time and create new runs. There is a reason why at the start of every new run, the first thing you see in a black screen is "This is how you died." The game is supposed to be a hardcore survival experience in a zombie apocalypse world. It tries to emulate as realistically as possible a person trying to survive in this scene. You have to keep track of your thirst and hunger like any survival game. But what if I told you that climbing over broken glass can cut your hands? You have to keep track of every body part. You can get a cold if you're wearing wet clothes. If you're a smoker and you don't smoke for a certain period of time, you can get anxious or depressed. Wanna shoot a gun? Well, tough luck, because if you don't have a good aiming skill, you're not gonna shoot shit. Oh, and let's not forget about the thousands of zombies that are around you and that can get triggered with the slightest noise ever. Project Zomboid brought all of the realism to an extreme, but also mixing it with good game design so it doesn't feel tedious. At the end of the day, it is a game with a very hard learning curve. And also, this doesn't make it everyone's cup of tea. But this is a key for community building. If you mix this very challenging game with good design just like Project Zomboid did, you get people talking. You start wondering, how do I get better at this game? Can I find some tips and tricks? Or even sharing the dumbest ways possible in which you have died. This brings people together and gets them in a space talking about how to go over this hurdle, how to get over this challenging game, but all while having fun. By treating your players like smart human beings and not handing them everything in a silver platter, you invoke this feeling for players to look for information outside your game. You spark a conversation outside the game and build a community outside the game. Indirectly, you're making them talk about you while not playing your game. Think about it as deep lore in some games like Warhammer or World of Warcraft. If you play the game, you cannot even grasp the surface of the deep lore that is behind this. So you have to go online watching video essays, reading thousands of books, or even going into comics or different stuff just to try and grasp a little bit of the lore of these games out there. This is what you're doing with Project Zomboid or challenging games. You're sparking conversation outside and building this sense of community by players helping each other and feeling the need of progressing with each other. So we talked about the challenging part of Project Zomboid and community building. But what about the genre? If you're a game that has no previous community to rely on, or deep lore, or even a universe where all your games are centered, how do I build my community with this out of scratch? Well, it's simple. Just jump on a community that has been built already in a genre. You might not know this, but Project Zomboid also took heavy inspiration in Minecraft. Yeah, Minecraft, you know, that small indie game built by some Swedish developers out there. It's not very famous, but you might have heard of it. Well, this is exactly what Project Zomboid did. They took on Minecraft's approach of a sandbox style of game and they implemented it in Project Zomboid. For people that don't know what sandbox is, a sandbox-like game is a type of game where developers throw you in a world with no further instructions, no questline or no storyline, and you just simply can do anything. The world is your oyster. Do whatever you want with it. Just like a kid in a sandbox, do whatever you want inside it. And that's exactly what Project Zomboid is. And just like the challenging aspect, giving freedom to your players is a massive point in community building and nurturing. You give the freedom to your players to do whatever they want. This sparks discussion, just like the challenging part. But most importantly, your game stays true to itself. It's true to its genre, meaning that your game has an identity, so it connects with your player. For a community to be built, your video game has to have an identity, because at the end of the day, an identity is what really resonates with the player. How I mentioned, this is how you connect with the player, and connection is, without a doubt, the most important aspect of community building. Without connection, no community is ever created. Taking me to my final point on why Project Zomboid is a success and why Project Zomboid succeeded in community building. This game was created by developers that care and developers that are present in the development cycle and present talking to the players. The game was started as a passion project and it has been treated as one since the beginning. As mentioned, 42 major updates have been released, but without counting the thousands or hundreds of mini patches that there have been in between and other updates just adding smaller stuff in between the big updates. The devs are constantly active in blogs, their websites, and Discord, being very transparent to the players and communicating new changes that are coming. Even some of the major updates in the game have started thanks to players requesting it or even from voting within the community. Most importantly, you pay a one-time fee and you get access to the full game plus every future update ever, and the game has not a single microtransaction inside it. Want to make a successful game? Sell it with passion and as something made by human beings and not something that a corporation is selling and seeing their players as cents and numbers. And yes, people sometimes complain about Project Zomboid's delays in updates and how long they take between each update, but we're talking about a small team here. But also, most importantly, we're talking about a team that haven't dropped development in 14 years. They are still at work and they are not looking that they're gonna stop anytime soon. They are as committed to this game as the players that get every day to play, as their community. This creates trust. This creates the connection between the players and the developers. And this is the foundations of community building. If you have trustworthy devs, players will not care and they will give you their money and their time to play your game. And this is why Project Zomboid is considered a massive success in my books and in community building. I want to try and keep it brief with our failure. You might even know which game I'm gonna refer to. But this game had everything to succeed and was even considered the savior of a whole company. They played their last card and they budged the bed even before releasing the game. We're talking about Assassin's Creed Shadows. When comparing the numbers, on paper, Assassin's Creed Shadows numbers may look similar or better than Project Zomboid's. 3 total million players, similar Steam numbers, and they got a lot of media virality, even if it was for the wrong reasons. But the context, as I mentioned, is very different. The game's budget was between $250 million and $350 million. It was developed across 17 studios by a multi-billion-dollar studio and more than 1,000 employees involved in the development process. The credits at the end game are 2 hours, for fuck's sakes. So yes, this game didn't meet expectations. It came to the point that Tencent had to give a big cash injection to Ubisoft just so they could still be alive. So how did they screw up? This could be a 1 hour long video alone, and I'm not gonna dive into the political aspects of this game and all the controversy that they have. I'm gonna dive how Ubisoft killed one of their best franchises ever, because if you're young or you don't remember or you simply never played them, the first Assassin's Creed were masterpieces. They had rich stories, great gameplay, and honestly, they were just good games. They were basically the opposite of what Ubisoft is right now. They were games created with passion and love, and now Ubisoft just creates products. Whether it was for the best or not, the reality is that Assassin's Creed over the years has changed their style of game they aim to provide to the player. If we consider the first Assassin's Creed up to AC3, we're talking about a game with a limited open world with not really a lot to do aside from the rich linear story they provided. But in Black Flag, the rhythm changed. Assassin's Creed decided to move more to an RPG style of game, which hey, for Odyssey, Valhalla, and other Assassin's Creeds, it worked. But my point is how you stray away from the community that you have been building from before. You build this community with your old games and with a formula that you proved with your other games that worked, and now you decided to throw it away and try something new. I don't want you to get me wrong, I'm not dunking on innovation, but for Assassin's Creed, it really didn't work. In my opinion, if I'm looking for a full open world RPG experience, my first choice will never be Assassin's Creed, and I know that a lot of players that play the original games feel the same way. Aside from the quality in gameplay declining with each Assassin's Creed, and Assassin's Creed feeling like a Call of Duty with a new release every year, the reality is that Assassin's Creed moved away from their essence and their core gameplay, and tried becoming something that in reality they are not. Those changes finally made the community realize this. And it built up to a point where Shadows took the fall for it, shattering your community and leaving old fans without even wanting to try your new game. I mean, damn it, Assassin's Creed was always about rich linear story, and now you got Shadows with mechanics like romance choices, consequential choices, and a bunch of pointless side quests that just waste your time. That might work for some audiences, but the reality is that if you want to build on your old community too, Assassin's Creed was never about it. Your core audience would never be on board with that. Ubisoft did the opposite of nurturing a community. They strayed away from the grassroots that created that loving fan base in the first place. This is one of the reasons of why they failed in this game. Another point in this failure for Shadows is the massive PR disaster. I cannot mention it, it was a shit show. From multiple delays, to the devs saying that they will only respond to good criticism, and even the controversy of changing Wikipedia articles just so they align with their historical facts. The reality is that the handling of Shadows PR before releasing the game, it was very bad. I will not get into the details of every mistake they made, but I will mention that what you don't want to do when handling PR for a game pre-releasing, it's being hostile with your audience. I don't give a damn if your audience is the biggest pain in the ass ever. As a developer, you either stay quiet or try to get the players on your side, cause they are the ones that are gonna pay and play your game at the end of the day. Going to replay battles, trying to over-explain them things, and treating them like stupid people will only crack your community. You lose players that were on the fence of buying your game, and you get a massive amount of haters that will only talk shit about your new game. So, want to fracture a community and drive people away? Why don't you act like you know better than the player and then try to sell your game? Let's see how you do. Never take a hostile tone with your players or your clients. This is the worst you can do, and even worse if you do it in the marketing process. And this is also how you don't build a community to begin with. All of this said before points out that Ubisoft took a corporate approach in PR handling. But most importantly, Ubisoft took a corporate approach in creating games years ago. 17 studios, 1,000 plus employees does not only create a hierarchy in the game design making it difficult, but also create a hierarchy that makes it impossible for you to connect with your player. The player no longer feels that they're talking to a human being, but rather talking to a corporation that only see them as dollar signs. I'ma be real with you, Shadows isn't a travesty, but how everything was handled and how they managed everything before didn't even give them a chance for players to see how good or how bad the game is to begin with. But then again, with such a hierarchy in the design process, how good of a game can you make? They added a battle pass system to a single player game, for fuck's sakes. I know you cannot buy tiers of the battle pass with real life money and it's all tied to in-game progression, but still, what kind of game design choice is that? And let's not forget that Assassin's Creed has been having microtransactions in single player games for years now. Even though they're cosmetics, why on God's earth would you add that? All of this shows how the studio lost the plot, how they are completely disconnected from their community, or the little people that are left in it. Please compare all of this with Project Zomboid, and tell me that one game doesn't feel like a soulless corporate product, and the other doesn't feel like an actual passion-created game. These are the steps in how to destroy a community. And Ubisoft destroyed a community that at one point was as big as the communities of people playing Elder Scrolls or GTA games. This was my comparison of both successes and failures in community building. We're talking about different audiences, different genres, and even a different context to begin with. But it is interesting to see how one game had to build from zero and succeeded, and the other one had everything aligned to succeed and fail. This is the importance of community in video games. And remember that community is everywhere, and it is very important and can be your best friend when used in marketing a project or a game of your own. And just like Project Zomboid, community building can be achieved even before adding multiplayer to your game. Just remember to always try and build that emotional connection with the player, and always get your player to try and talk outside of your game about your game. You can give them a rich lore, a rich story, a challenging game game, or just simply present developers that talk to their audiences like human beings. These are just some examples, but please remember that you always have to build something with your target audience in mind, with the grassroots that connect that player to the game. Just think about a game that is really close to your heart. What made you fall in love with that? Are they JRPG gamers, casual gamers, or competitive gamers? Always try and give your audience what they want. Don't forget to listen to them, and please, for the love of God, make a game and not a product. So this was the case studies for today. And please remember that community is everything, because even if you have a half-finished product, your community will stick with you just if you show that you have signs of keep improving and listening to them. Thank you so much for watching. You have no idea how much I have enjoyed making these types of videos and the support that I have been getting from you guys. From analyzing the economy of CSGO skins to talking about brand loyalty and now community, I will keep talking about different case studies in the gaming world and try to bring you different insights. If you liked the video, please consider liking and subscribing, since we're all building a small community here too. A real human community with a real human face, real human dialogue, and none of that AI bullcrap here. So thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.